Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis Cox with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to bring you the new moon dash total solar eclipse forecast for Christmas Day, December 25th. It is December 24th as I film this, a little bit later than I intended, and we're already sort of in the shadow of this eclipse. We're already feeling the effects of it, and probably for a couple days have been, although it's been a little bit mixed with the moon going through its point of debilitation and also being joined Mars right prior to that. So we're maybe had some anger and then maybe some emotional roller coaster, and now we're moving into that eclipse period. And like I said, we've actually already moved into it by the time I'm filming this. So we have, perhaps a lot of emotions that are up for us right now. And as it is Christmas Day, it's a time when we tend to collect with friends and more often family. We tend to be around people a lot, be out shopping, buying things, eating things. We tend to be in the mix and in the fray. And of course, new moons are always times where we want to sort of be in a more meditative space. We don't want to be stuffing our face with chocolate, and we don't want to be, having petty or silly conversation or superficial conversation. We want to be kind of going into that deeper state of mind. And the two are at odds, right? The Christmas holiday here in the West is at odds with the actual astrology that we're experiencing right now. And I've been talking about that the last few forecasts, just some tips on ways to deal with that, because it really began in Thanksgiving, this period of time where we're sort of having to face the holidays, and all that entails, when in truth it's a time when we're sort of waning down to this period right now, this eclipse, and also the solstice that we just experienced on the 21st. So we had, what's the shortest day of the year in the northern hemisphere, and the sun will start to find its path forward. But as soon as we just had that solstice, our sun is going to be eclipsed. So it's like the sun is moving into its power, moving into its growth, moving on an up cycle, or a waxing cycle as we use when we're talking about the moon moving to full, but it's getting eclipsed. It's getting its power sort of blacked out for a period of time, and that's what this report's about. Just to give you a little time frame, on Christmas Day in California, in Pacific time, it's going to be in the evening. So we're not going to actually be seeing this eclipse. We'll be, feeling the effects of it, but it'll be India, Saudi Arabia, some places like Guam and in the Pacific that will be actually witnessing the eclipse. For us, it will be nighttime. It'll be dark, so we, of course, won't see the sun anyway. The actual time of the eclipse is from 6:29 p.m. until 12:05 a.m. on the 26th. The maximum time is at 9:17 p.m. and the time the sun and the moon come together in exact degrees for that new moon is 9:13. So, just about the same as the actual height of the eclipse, the maximum point of it. So this eclipse is in a part of the sky called Mula, and it's at the very beginning of Sagittarius. It's on an axis with another star called Ardra in Gemini. And this is like the most tumultuous axis in the sky. This is a calamitous place. And I've told the story of Ardra, I think, actually in the most recent forecast on Mrigashira when we had our full moon there. But our the story of the downfall and the storm on that end. Mula is where we uproot. It's where we literally dig into the dirt and pull it up by the roots. And of course, this can be, clearing and cleansing and purifying, and depending on what path you're on in this life and in this spiritual world, it can feel good in many ways to uproot something that's not working. But it's also pretty traumatic. It rarely is peaceful, easeful, and it's usually pretty harsh. The idea of even doing that to the earth, to plants, is pretty intense if you actually look at the roots and then you look at the gaping holes that are left where you pulled something out. And of course, the land then needs to be tended again. It needs to be brushed over, and the soil needs to be turned before you plant something else in those holes. So this is us. This is us that are experiencing this in our own lives. Whatever area of your life Sagittarius reigns over, you are uprooting something, and it doesn't feel pleasant. It doesn't feel good. It's not easy. It's stressful. And that uprooting is making space for something really awesome, perhaps, to be planted there. But in the meantime, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make it ready for that new stuff. So it's painful. And Mula itself is ruled by this deity, this goddess named Niriti. And Niriti is like Kali. She's the dark goddess of chaos and destruction. But while Kali has this sort of nurturing aspect to her as a part of Durga, Niriti is more like just absolute chaos and like a tornado, like something that just sweeps through and just blows it, and doesn't really leave anything besides these gaping holes in the wake. And it is a part of us and an experience that we're going to be having that will most likely make us feel like we're kind of in that washing machine or that tornado or that hurricane-like feeling where we're just being pummeled and we're not really able to grab a hold of anything or feel secure in that moment because we just have to get swept up in it. And so that's obviously disturbing for most people, and it depends on where it falls in your chart. A lot of people will talk about how if it's for certain lords, for your ruling planet, it could be more harsh than for others. There's a lot of variance on how you can interpret that. If it's happening in a harsh house, that's already a harsh house, it's already sort of a harsh placement in your chart. Whereas if it's happening in a place that brings you structure, it could actually be more of an uprooting, because it could literally uproot you from a relationship or uproot you from your home or uproot you from your career, something like that. So, I'm always careful, and good astrologers are, to not call things good or bad. They just are, and you can understand them in all the different complexities and feel how it might feel, which is probably not good, as I said, probably won't make you feel warm, fuzzy, comfortable. But if you're in an area of your life where you're already not warm and fuzzy and comfortable, then it might be less of a rude awakening than in an area of your life where you do actually reach for comfort and structure and security. So that's something to be aware of. And if you have not yet, you can sign up for my newsletter and get your free report on Jupiter for all of the 12 rising signs. And it will show you where, what house Sagittarius is for you, because Jupiter is in its own sign right now in Sagittarius. And this is a huge blessing in this eclipse, because the sun and the moon coming together there, those are our two luminaries. And when they're already in a new moon, we're already feeling that blacked out energy of our moon, of our emotional state. Well, in an eclipse, the sun is getting blacked out, right? So our power, our authority, our leadership is being eclipsed. And these are like portals, the eclipses. They're times when we are able to access information from other realms. And with Ketu, the South Node, we're accessing the past. We're accessing old wisdom, old karmas. We're closing karmas. We're bringing things to culmination. And so it's stuff we don't want to deal with. It's not exciting. It's not new. It's old. But it's kind of like there's still a little hole that we have to close on whatever it is that we think we've already done. So it's particularly painful when it's the South Node, because there's no interest there. It's something that we want. We have like a disgust and a distaste for that area of our life for the whole time that the South Node's in that place, and the eclipses will continue to happen that cycle. The North Node, we're more excited because it's something that's new and fresh that we're starting. But with the South Node, it's something that we actually feel like we've already cleared. Like we feel like we finished that karma, but we have not. And so that is tricky. It's tricky. It's challenging. And so like I was saying, Jupiter is in that particular spot, Jupiter being the ruler of Sagittarius, and Jupiter being the planet of wisdom, and Sagittarius being the sign where we seek that wisdom outside of us, in the outside world. We go out into the world, we find ideals, we find beliefs through different cultures, through different religions, through different belief systems, and we're able to incorporate them into our own. This place in the sky can be very, very profound and very inspirational, or it can be very dogmatic and very rigid and force a set of rules on us that have been dictated by some other entity. So it's really depends on the quality of your own Jupiter in your chart for sure. But this time in the sky, we all have Jupiter in its own sign. So we all have a little more access, even if you don't generally have much access to higher wisdom, you have more than usual. And in this time when we have access to maybe even otherworldly or out of this realm information. And that's the thing to really understand about the eclipse points. They bring havoc in our charts, in our natal charts, and in our lives during eclipses because they are not of this world. Because in this world, we want, jobs and friends and partners and homes, and we want security and we want things to work. And they bring a chaotic element where it's energy from somewhere else, and it's not necessarily going to work in this realm. And so it can be upsetting and it can be disturbing. And that's why during eclipses, it's best not to be, driving or socializing or shopping or doing something that is going to, keep you sort of in the regular world, the day-to-day, world, when really you could be accessing these other realms by sitting and meditating, or maybe doing something that connects you to those higher principles and that higher state. So it's, obviously we don't all have choices, and, we do have choices, but we might have already enlisted ourselves to some sort of Christmas event, and chances are you have, and chances are you're going to be with other people, and chances are you might eat a lot and, maybe even drink some alcohol or something else. You might be with family members that trigger you, or people that sort of bring up old stuff for you, that bring up old wounds for you. It's rare that you're spending Christmas with new people you just met. You're usually spending time with your family, and those are the people that can bring up your oldest triggers and your oldest wounds. So it's a time to really just be aware. You can't always change the circumstance that you're in as much as your state of mind around it. You can choose to maybe abstain from eating that extra plate of food, or you can abstain from drinking that second glass of wine, or you can abstain from having a conversation with somebody that really upsets you. In addition to Jupiter being joined the Sun and Moon and the South Node K2 in Sagittarius, we also have Mercury there. So we have our planet of communication. We have our planet that brings this information in and has us then pass it out again to others. And this planet is going to be particularly important here simply because it's going to kind of be the planet that gets us into conversations that could cause problems. Like it's our communication, literally. So in Sagittarius already, Mercury has this tendency to sort of make us stand on a pulpit or give our opinion where maybe we could have kept our mouths shut. It's that placement where we sort of let our beliefs come out. And then again, this is sort of something that people talk about every holiday, like, oh, don't discuss politics or religion or blah, blah, blah over the dinner table. And of course people do, and all those factors I just talked about with the drinking and the eating and all this different stuff and the family wounds brings that stuff to light. Well, when Mercury's in Sagittarius, you're more likely to step up on that pulpit. You're more likely to give everyone, a preachy sermon on why they're so wrong and why you're so right. And obviously, that's not the most effective form of communication, and it's also just not really going to help you in those circles. If you're speaking to people who are like-minded beliefs to you, or you're trying to actually make some difference in the world and change something, that's one thing. But when you get into these kind of arguments, either on social media or with your family members, and I know I talked about this at Thanksgiving time, it's like there's kind of no point. You're not going to change Uncle whatever's opinion. You're not going to, it's like there's not, it's just disharmony, and it's just bringing more pain and suffering to you, having to go through the process of sort of arguing or feeling upset that they don't see things your way, and all this kind of stuff. So there's a strong precaution here called, maybe just try to find that buddhi, that discrimination, which is what Mercury really is. It's our sense of discrimination to choose your words and where you share your beliefs. Like, don't waste your breath, don't waste your time, don't waste your energy sharing things in places that it's not going to be received at all. It's not that it's just not going to be well received, it's that it's not, there's no point. There's no, there's no reason to get in that interchange, and it's just draining your resources for places where they could be used. So you could instead listen to a podcast of somebody that you really admire or respect. We just had the very sad passing, very sad is actually not the words I would use to describe it, but Ram Dass, a spiritual leader in our community, in the yoga community, in the bhakti community, and really for people all over the world, has just left his body. And this kind of thing, like these kind of words and teachings that he shared, the wisdom that he shared through his guru, through Neem Karoli Baba, and through his own presence as a guru in our time, as a teacher, is this is the time to listen to things like that. This is the time to allow yourself to take 5 minutes away from your family and go sit and just maybe listen to a podcast or something that makes you feel that peace in your heart and that sense of spiritual belonging, or that there are other people who see things in the way that you do, and you're not crazy, or whatever it is that your story is with your family, where you have to constantly question yourself or fight for yourself or whatever it is. You can go take a step aside and do something like that, and that would satisfy that part of that mental part of you that really wants to speak or converse or interchange. You can have a phone call with a friend that you love and know, and maybe share that experience with each other, so that you can step away from whatever you're doing at your dinner table or with your family. You can take a walk in nature, and you can listen to music. There's so many different ways we can sort of satisfy this part of us. We can journal without having to actually engage in a conversation with somebody where it's not going to go very well. So it's just some tips, because Mercury in that Mula Nakshatra, joined the sun and the moon, can kind of want to uproot also. Do you know what I mean? Our speech, we can kind of want to just like uproot others. And the point of these harsh energies, all the harsh energies, Mars, the sun, Saturn, the nodes, and Mercury is not a harsh energy, but when it's in a placement like this, it can become that way. These planets, we are supposed to grow ourselves. Through challenges, through tough experiences, through discipline with Mars, through courage, through our own experience of anger and facing it, through the hardships of Saturn, through our fear, through our humility, through the nodes and having to experience this sort of weird delusional reality, through the burning light of the sun that's purifying us and making us see things in a way that is higher but also somewhat painful. These energies are supposed to help us grow. Like, you shine that light on yourself. You humble yourself. You discipline yourself. You don't go around disciplining everyone else. You don't go around telling everyone else what they need to do in order to become better. You become better. If you've ever heard that saying, nobody liked me when I came home and I was a Buddhist, but when I came home and I was the Buddha, everybody was happy to have me at the table. And I know that's just a paraphrase, but something like that. The more you become the different things you believe, the more everyone's going to be accepting of that, and even drawn to it, magnetized to it, and wanting to raise themselves up. The more you're preaching at people about the things they need to change, the more you're really just projecting what you need to change. You need to be more disciplined, and so you're going to bark at uncle, whatever, who's got a pot belly and that he's eating 5 helpings of food, or whatever the story is. We have a tendency to point the finger at others when really what we're seeing is our own shadows and our own darkness. So this is a time to really not do that, especially with words. Really take the time to reflect on what it is you want to say, you believe, whatever argument comes up for you, and step aside and have it somewhere else. have it with yourself, and like I said, listen to something uplifting. The the planet Saturn has been in Sagittarius for 2.5 years now, with a little hiatus out, and it's going to move into its own sign of Capricorn in January. So we're seeing that Jupiter's already in its own sign of Sagittarius, and Saturn will be in Capricorn in January. This is really going to be helpful for us because Saturn in Sagittarius has been sort of constricting for our belief systems. It's been kind of a downer, not gonna lie. And it's also brought a lot of fear, joined with the South Node, in this place where we're supposed to be inspired. And because of that, we've seen this happen on sort of a bigger scale. We've seen the governmental kind of constriction. We've seen that fear is ruling our political systems and our social choices and on a bigger scale in the world. But what we might not see as clearly is how it's working in our own lives and how it's been constricting our own belief systems and forcing us into a hole kind of where we're like not wanting to kind of give up control and not wanting to expand our views to include those of others, and feeling so fearful that others' views are actually literally like attacking us or something. And at times they have been. There's been times when Mars has been in direct drishti with this Saturn Ketu, that I would say we have literally been sort of being attacked, and it's scary, and it feels militant, and it feels uncomfortable, and it should. But whatever is out there is in here too. Whatever you see in the world, you have inside of you also, and you have it maybe in your small circle of friends or your family or whatever. So it's very hard to change something out there if you can't change it in here. It's at least a good place to start. So we turn to teachings that are true now with Jupiter and Sagittarius, teachings that hold water over time, that are really true, not just like a detail that's true in this time right now that we think is a fact, but something that can stand the test of time, and that could be said again and again and again and again. And this is why we turn to our teachers. This is why we turn to Ram Dass. This is why we turn to whoever inspires you to remind us. To remind us of what we really already know, what we are all born knowing and understanding and have sort of been trained not to. And everything in our society is kind of tilted off of remembering. It's tilted off of truth just slightly. And the businesses and corporations that really rule everything, including our government, are, they're not trying to be aligned. They're not trying to be aligned with nature. They're not trying to be aligned with, the astronomy or the astrology. They're not trying to be aligned with science. They're not trying to be aligned. It's the goal of any enterprise is literally just to make money, and you don't make as much money in an aligned scenario because people don't need as much stuff. So we are in a situation where we have to fight against our own training and our own upbringing and socialization and indoctrination, and the only way to do that is from the inside out. That's really the only way. We can have these different ideas, we can buy different toys for our kids or send them to different schools. We can try different things from the outside to change it, but if we're not changing it from the inside, it doesn't matter if your child is playing with wood toys or plastic toys. It doesn't matter if you're trying to teach them nonviolent communication if you don't use it. It doesn't matter what you do to sort of band-aid the problems if you're not fixing them from the inside out. And that's really been a big lesson over the last year. While Jupiter was in Scorpio, we had to kind of dive deep into our inner shadow work and face maybe the fact that we aren't as aligned as we'd like to be with our belief systems, and with all the fear and all the anger and all the just harsh cutting from our own truth and our own emotions and our own concern that we see in the world around us, that just quite awful reflection that's all around us. the time has come, right? The time is here, and all the memes in the world on Facebook aren't going to help you necessarily do that work. It's like at some point you have to just sit and look in a mirror, or sit and close your eyes and look in your inner mirror, to actually do that work. And that's where we're at that time. And this eclipse will be powerful, and it will be intense, and it will be uprooting, and it will be calamitous, and it will be a lot of things, and it already kind of is, right? Where, like I said, I'm filming this a little bit late, so we're already in Christmas Eve morning now, and it already is starting to take hold of us. And it's like many things that feel negative or feel harsh or feel bad, it will propel us to the next level of our personal development, of our growth, of our expansion, of what we need, especially in Sagittarius, of our expansion. But it will not likely feel good in the process. And that's, that's the truth of growth. The things that make us feel really good are rarely the things that make us really grow. That the stress is what helps you grow in the end. So we do have 2 planets not in our eclipse, in our eclipse house. We have Mars just moved into his own sign of Scorpio. So he's been in Libra. We've had perhaps some little bit of, lack of discipline, maybe even blaming other people. And also perhaps some sort of fighting in relationships can come up when Mars is in Libra. We can see that Libra is the field of relationships, and Mars is just that aggro energy, that aggressive energy that sort of cuts off and wants to find fault or wants to argue, especially when it's feeling, when we are feeling not like a clear channel of where, when we feel that our physical discipline and our physical courage and our physical path is stunted or being blocked or being inhibited by something outside of us, we tend to express that in an angry way. And when Mars is in Libra, we're less likely to be super disciplined, and we're more likely to be, hanging out with other people. And that can be a challenge for us when we, when we feel badly about the fact that we haven't done the different things that we feel like we should be doing, we might put that blame on someone else. So with Mars in his own sign of Scorpio, now we have a chance to, tap back into our own personal discipline. And that energy is meant to be selfish. It's meant to be the part of us that gets up and does our practice, that, does these different things we know are good, that holds back from maybe some extra sweets or extra food that we don't want to eat, that's able to hold certain boundaries for ourselves, and also create ridges and lines around us and other people. That is actually very important for us, especially in this time, especially in this holiday. But because it's like kind of unstable, it's literally just changing into it, we won't see ourselves fully empowered in that way. We're sort of still fledgling from all that lack of discipline and all that sort of action in the realm of relationship, and not our own personal needs being taken care of. So it's kind of a new thing that's just happening right in time for this eclipse. And then Venus, our planet of relationships, of love and happiness and pleasure and enjoyment, is in Capricorn. So it's outside of the house of Sagittarius, outside of this eclipse, party that's happening. And it's in a sign that's very selfishly motivated, very much about pleasure comes from taking long-term goals and starting the work towards them. Pleasure comes from being in the earth, near the earth, and grounded practical action. When Venus is in Capricorn, you see a utilitarian quality around how you view others. Your relationships are modes of getting things you need done, and that can, doesn't always feel good. It's not the most romantic thing on earth, but it is practical, and it has long-term results, and it is committed for sure. It's Saturn's sign, Capricorn, and it's where we knuckle down and do what we need to do, and it's where we do look towards the long term, and it's where we are frugal in our spending or in our ways of finding pleasure and happiness, and it's where we're willing to wait and be patient and be adult about things, and not just throw our pleasure all over the place or find it in the first place we can get it. And so these two planets, Venus and Mars, being outside of that has a couple different things, a couple different qualities. First of all, it gives us, like I said, that sense of self-purpose and doing something for ourselves, discipline for ourselves. Even our relationships are for ourselves. Our pleasure comes from a selfish place right now. That is good for this particular alignment, good with a relative term, because it gives us an opportunity to hold our own space while the chaos is going on and not get caught up in other people's chaos or other people's whirlwinds, because it's like, well, this is my own personal whirlwind. It's happening in this house in my chart, and I am going to be disciplined in the ways that I know how to be, and I am going to, keep my eye on a long-term prize of happiness, not a short-term one. And that can be very helpful in a time like this through romantic relationships or partnerships, and certainly, with the people that you might be spending your holiday with. So the other thing that comes up with this is that people who are ruled by Venus or ruled by Mars, meaning Aries rising, Taurus rising, Scorpio rising, and Libra rising, these people have their ruling planet out of the eclipse. So whatever planets are in there, I've talked about the qualities of Saturn, perhaps the qualities of Jupiter, the qualities of the sun and the moon, but those planets all rule a house for you. So not only is it happening in a specific house in your chart, but those house lords are hanging out in that area of your life. So through whatever house Sagittarius is, you're experiencing all these other house lords doing their thing, and those areas of your life will also be affected. If you are a Venus or Mars ruled person, it means not only is your own self, your own identity out of the eclipse, but it also means your significant other or your house of partnership is out of the eclipse, because Venus people have Mars ruling their 7th house and Mars people have Venus ruling their 7th house. So you end up in a situation where sort of you and your maybe, romantic partner or your significant other, your whatever that looks like for you, or even maybe like a work partner or something, are kind of out of the fray a little bit and having some personal discipline and space to access, while all these other areas of your life get sort of tumulted and thrown around. Whereas other people might have themselves and their partnership very much engaged. Even though Venus is out of the fray, their 7th lord is in the fray, and if you're a Gemini rising, it's happening in your 7th house. So it's literally your house of partnership that's getting, tumulted, and that it can happen through house lordship for the other signs. So that's just something to be aware of. Certainly Sun, Moon has Saturn as ruling at 7th house. So all of those are going to be involved, engaged, and in part of the situation. And again, eclipses aren't to be feared in some way like it's this horrible thing. They're to be understood. Just like all of these energies, Saturn isn't to be feared, it is your fear. So if you can step outside of it and acknowledge it and observe it and say, wow, I'm feeling fear right now, as opposed to just being totally in it, then you have a chance for real growth, really high growth. If you can be the observer in these situations and say, wow, look at me getting totally tossed right now. If you've ever been in the ocean and just been completely taken by a wave and you're tumbling under the water, you're tumbling, you don't know which way is up, which way is down, you have kind of the choice to panic and like fight against it and be like totally, probably choking full of water and maybe hopefully tossed out onto the shore. Or you have this choice to kind of find a calm within you and like, this is what it is, I can't fight it. I don't know which way is up. I don't know which way is down. I can protect my head. I can be as calm as I can. I can hold my breath and try not to get water in. But ultimately, I know I will be tossed out onto a shore and hopefully it will be, alive. But there's really, your choices in life when you're in challenging situations are kind of like be calm or don't be calm. It's not necessarily to fix the situation at hand. And so using whatever methods you have to be calm and to find your part of you that can step outside and observe and acknowledge and witness, as opposed to just getting tossed around and being so attached to that reality is really, and it's a challenge. And we often fluctuate. If you are on a spiritual path and you are watching this video, likely you are at least a little bit on a spiritual path, you probably fluctuate. Sometimes you're kind of in it and like, oh, I'm so mad, blah, blah, and sometimes you're kind of able to witness and come outside of it. That's normal. You know, if you're always in that witness state, then you probably aren't watching this video because you don't need to. So it's normal to fluctuate in and out, and it's normal to find new heights of growth are scary, and maybe your first reaction is to cling back to what you know and behaviors that you know and patterns that you know and things you used to do, and then you can be like, oh, I can do something different this time, you know, and you pedal forward a different way. So I hope that for you, and I hope that your solstice was prayerful and that you're able to ride through this time and find that message, that clear understanding of what it is for you right now that needs to be uprooted and what new thing you want to plant, which is really the powerful part of it. And as we, you know, happen to ring in the Gregorian New Year here, we will be coming off of these two powerful astrological events as well. So I wish you well, and see you in 2020. Namaste.